My name's Green. I've brewed beer for 25-30 years, but I've done it in a very authentic way, but using very rudimentary equipment, which I put together for about 25 years ago. So for my mash, and I use all grain mash, all grain beers, so I don't use extracts or sugars particularly. My mash arrangement is an old packing case, glass fibre. So inside that I put a bucket with kind of really hot water, and then my mash bucket inside the bucket of hot water. So that maintains my mash temperature to kind of 65 degrees for critically an hour or so. That works pretty well. So I'm in the middle of a brew today. So I'm doing a Saison for the first time using a Belgian Saison yeast. It's kind of a fruity, spicy beer, very high level of attenuation. So that means it's got an ability to ferment all the alcohol, all the sugars into alcohol, leaving you with a fairly sort of dry, crisp result. It's my first time. I'm also doing a stout using there's me mashed me sparged grains there. So I kind of used a lot of pale malt, chocolate malt, black malt, crystal malt, and a Rauch malt, which is a rare German smoked malt. So will be interesting to see how that comes out. Got a range of hops. That boil is going on at the moment, so it's a good kind of rolling boil, making the house smell like a brewery. So my goal this year, in a very strange year of lockdown, is, because I spend quite a bit of time in the Corbières in southern France, which is a big wine producing area. So my goal is to make a whole range of beers, and I've got about 8 at the moment in my cellar, and take them to the Corbières, one of the biggest wine producing areas in France, and try and, if not convert them, at least get some of the French people in the village of Quintillan to appreciate some of the beers from England. Good morning. So I'm just bottling my Saison. It's had a really, I think, quite a good fermentation. Really, it looks, the yeast head looked pretty good. I think it went quite well. I racked it, let it sort of settle, secondary fermentation, clear a little bit. So I've just bottled good old 20 litres of Saison. It's got quite a nice colour to it. I put a little bit of Munich malt in. It's given me that really kind of nice orangey, golden colour. And a quick taste. As I was bottling, it's a bit early to start drinking at kind of 6:30 in the morning, even for me. And it's got a nice dry, sour kind of feel to it, which is apparently the kind of classic characteristics of a Saison. So I'm fairly pleased. It's going to be bottle conditioned. It's going to take probably like a month to get in reasonable condition. So that's the next stage of the process of taking it then down to the south of France in the Corbières and trying to get some of them guys off the old red wine and on the old beer. So watch this space. Hi, so I've conditioned the beers. They've had a good few weeks to settle down. I've decanted them to leave the sediment behind in England, and they're ready to go. So I'm kind of packing the car up now. There's a range of beers ready to take down to the first ever beer tasting festival in the Corbières. There's not a vast quantity, but I've got a few bottles of each. I've got a pale, a lager, a slightly darker lager, a Saison, a bitter, and a dark stout. So I've got to Dover, the White Cliffs there behind me. I've got through one set of customs checks with all the beer, so hopefully I'll be okay. Getting into France, they don't look too closely in the car. I've heard in the village in Quintillan you can't. Word's getting about the old beer festival and tasting, and apparently you can't get a hotel room anywhere in the village. I mean, there aren't any hotels actually in the village, but that's still, you know, it's worth making that point really, that you still can't get in, because I think it's, you know, the word's got around, yeah. So here we are. I've been driven down through France into the Corbières region with a car full of beer. So I feel slightly apprehensive about driving into the village. Right in the middle of the Corbières, surrounded by vineyards with a lot of beer. Having the first beer festival in the village of Quintillan. En français et aussi en anglais, oui?
No.
Oh no, okay. En français.
My English is very... ben, tu traduiras.
Bah voilà.
Eh bien, je suis heureux, content d'être invité par Ram et Sue pour déguster la bière que fait Graham. Graham dit que c'est is the first fête de la bière in Quintillan.
Elle est très bonne, elle a un goût de Jeanlin. Elle est plus jolie. Elle est très fraîche, elle explose en bouche.
En bouche, oui.
Ça,
Okay.
elle a un good taste.
Oh, okay. C'est bon.
Your face is good.
Les bières.
Congratulations, Graham, because your beer is very good, like a professional.
You're a master.
Oui, okay, merci. Henri?
Well, perfect. Even for the Belgian, it's perfect.
Okay. Oui. Ivan, qu'est-ce que c'est les bières?
Elles sont très bonnes.
I'm seeing this fête as more of a sequence or a string of smaller events rather than one large event. I don't have enough beer really to host a very large event, but last night we had Ivan, who is a bit of a beer connoisseur, elder statesman of the village, came and sort of opened up the fête, you know, bigging it up a bit, but you know. Henri, who's a Belgian who loves his beer and chips. Kevin and Mona from the northeast of France, who do like the beer as well.
On la recommande, mais bon, un peu amère, mais excellent.
Oui, ok.
Excellent.
Oui, ok. Merci. Comment est la bière, Jean? C'est bon?
Oui, voilà.
C'est bon. Merci.
Excellente. Elle a du goût. Elle est un peu amère. C'est un plaisir de la boire.
Ok.
Tu peux en offrir d'autres, c'est magique.
Merci beaucoup. So we've had a few kind of tastings with the vignerons have actually tasted some of the beers, and I'm quite pleased with the reception. They were a bit taken by the strength of the hop varieties, but we're here right in the heart of the Corbières, and there's a bit of a few people tasting a few beers and a bit of wine. Over the wall there's a 100-year-old vineyard with Carignan grapes. So right in the heart of it, so I've taken my beers right to the heart of the Corbières, and I've not really had any real problems yet, so quite pleased with the way that people have received the beers, yeah. So here I am down the village pool, which is a beautiful freshwater pool. After the tastings last night, quite pleased with how they're going. Tomorrow I've got a friend coming over from near Toulouse who's a self-proclaimed expert in beer, if only by virtue of the quantity he drank when he was at Cardiff University. To quote him, he drank like a fish, and it'll be interesting. He comes from kind of Huddersfield, Yorkshire, Cleckheaton. It'll be interesting for him to come over tomorrow and see what he makes of the beers. The vignerons have been fantastic, and so I'm kind of really pleased, and it's kind of interesting that they're not all that keen on the very hoppy beers, but we'll see. I might expose them to some different varieties. What sort of qualifications would you have, do you think, about having an opinion on beer then?
Well, I've always been very opinionated.
Yeah.
And I'm going to continue in the same vein.
Yeah. Yeah, but when you were younger at Cardiff University, yeah, you were
I
quite...
had a great beer in Cardiff. It was 25 pence a pint. It was Brain's bitter.
Yeah.
Brain's best bitter was absolutely fantastic beer. Because we had pretty good beer at the time in Yorkshire. You could get a good pint of Tetley's, but the Brain's was really good beer. And for £1 you had 4 pints.
And how much did you get through? Did you get through a bit?
Well, I still managed to burn up my whole grant within about, a third of the term, yeah?
Well,
On beer. On beer.
You could drink like a... What was it?
Well, a fish, I think, was the...
yeah. All right, okay.
As one of the world's foremost, authorities on bitter beer,
Yeah.
I find it's got a nice taste. It's got it's a little bit of
A bit more malty, isn't it?
It's got a nice malty taste, definitely. Very nice, yeah.
Quite a nice hoppy.
It's very nice, isn't it? There's a bit of it. Very nice, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
Cool, Betty? Bien. Qu'est-ce que tu aimes la bière?
Oui, j'aime bien.
Qu'est-ce que t'en penses?
C'est très bon.
Beer. No, you've had a...
Well, now that I've had a few.
Taste. Yeah.
Now that I've had a few, yeah.
Yeah, go on.
In fact, it's a very interesting beer. It just took me by surprise with the contrast, with the taste of the other beers that we had prior to this one. But in fact, it is. I do rate it very highly now. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. To come and taste the beer in the Quintillan in Corbières. So
and it's a
we're at
pleasure to do so. Yeah, it's a pleasure to do so, Graham.
Pale,
Like I said,
so what do you make of that one then?
well, I like the colour, and it's a great colour. I like the bouquet and the taste.
Yeah.
For me, it's really very, very nice. I like that a lot. That's
quite
good.
refreshing.
It is, yeah. I like that bitterness, actually.
Yeah.
It works.
I've got the recipe.
So,
Cheers.
better than some of this, better than the Heinekens.
Yeah. What do you kind of think to that then? It's got some, say, a whole range of malts.
It's very nice. It's different taste to Guinness,
Yeah.
but it's very, very acceptable.
Yeah. It's got a kind of dryness. There's a slight dryness, and I think some of that, Andrew, some of that I think is the Roche malt. I think some of the slightly kind of smoky, dry.
It is quite dry. It's a little bit sharp, but not overly sharp. There is a slight sweetness in the background, and actually almost chocolate.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
To it, almost chocolatey.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a big fan of Guinness, I have to say, but I would drink that. I drink a small amount of that more than I would drink a Guinness.
Would you?
Absolutely.
Yes.
And then have a whole bottle of red wine.
Yeah. I will. I'm quite pleased with how it's gone down here, the tasting. The whole thing about the vignerons kicking off was all obviously a bit of a jest, really. They're very, very lovely people here. And the vignerons are following a lot of family traditions. And it's, just about break even, really. They're not making a lot, but they clearly love to maintain the vines and the vineyards in this very beautiful area. Some of the pales and the lagers are a bit sharp for them, probably overly hopped. I do find some French lagers a little bit bland, really, without a lot of flavour. Henri, the Belgian, I think was giving me quite a compliment when he described me as a Belgian. I think as if you're a Belgian, describing someone else as a Belgian is seen as a compliment, but if you're not a Belgian, you might take that in different ways, but I'll take that as a kind of compliment, really. All in all, very pleased. I've been asked whether I want to actually set up a brewery here in the village, which I think might be a little bit tricky. It's been a great trip. I'm delighted to have done it from the brewing and carrying it down here and the tasting. It's been a real pleasure, and I think it kind of, anything that brings people together in a small remote village is a great thing to do. So cheers.